Babylonians. And I have taken this ancient art form and put a fresh twist to it. Basically, my training is in textile design. After completing my high school, I did an internship as well as an apprenticeship in textile design, and then went on to do graphic design. With all my international travels, I ended up in York, Pennsylvania. Still not sure why I came, but it's slowly growing on me. And 6 years ago, I actually stumbled across mosaic art. And how this happened is I was doing a design job for a big manufacturer downtown. They were fabricating traditional stained glass windows for a church that had burned down. And it was while I was working on this project that I encountered stained glass up close for the very first time and really fell in love with this medium. I wasn't too keen on the traditional stained glass windows, and so I began experimenting with glass and eventually found my own voice. And within a year or two, I had begun to create larger scale works and show in galleries. And just keep in mind, this is not something that I started out planning to do. As I said, I stumbled across it, but was drawn in more and more. But the more I created, I also felt that there was something missing. And for me, that missing element was a sense of authenticity. I think with most visual artists, at least, there's always this tension between creating work for the wallet and creating work for the soul. And at times, the wallet wins over and you just create for the sake of earning more and more money. And in my case, that was true as well. But there was also that emptiness. And so, a little over 2.5 years ago, I felt that I needed to put an end to that and do something that was a lot more authentic and meaningful for me. And so it was that my primary inspiration was my late mother, a wonderful African woman who was really dedicated to us, her children, in the face of many, many struggles. And so my very first mosaic portrait of an African woman was to honor my late mother, who was born in South Africa, but moved to Zimbabwe. And it was a very fulfilling mosaic. My intention was not to sell it, it was just to fulfill the longing for purpose and beauty. Well, it did eventually sell, and I've since embarked on another portrait, which I finished probably about 3 months ago, and it's this one. And these portraits are about 4 feet tall, and they typically take anywhere from 250 hours to 400 hours to complete. And they have over 3,500 little tiny pieces of glass. So it just gives you an idea of the time investment and the scale. And in honoring African women, what's really meaningful for me is that in my experience on the continent is that African women in general are overlooked, undervalued, undermined at times, and if you've been following the news, wherever there are civil wars, unfortunately end up being targeted with horrendous atrocities. And so both these portraits are titled African Woman, Africa's True Wealth. For me, when I look at Africa, I don't think the truest wealth of Africa lies in its diamonds, its gold, its natural resources. I think it lies in its human resources, and in particular, its women and young girls. And so I want to honor women by continuing to create these portraits, which for me highlight their beauty, their sense of inner and quiet strength and resilience. So, in a nutshell, that's the inspiration for me, and that's where I'm at with my mosaic art. And so I will open it up for questions from you, but also from Mr. Davidson.
Any questions? Jump in. I know you've done, you said you did artwork about your mother. Is that probably your most inspirational piece, or do you have others that you are more proud of? And are these things that you keep for personal and aesthetic value, or do you also sell these pieces?
I would say that the piece inspired by my late mother is my most important piece to date. However, I have done several bigger commissions, which are in private homes and in one public setting. And they are fairly big, and I am proud of them. But, I made money out of them. However, I am not as invested in them. They don't have that same personal meaning and significance. These African portraits are pretty close to me. And so these continue to be my most favorite. And like I say, my motivation was not to sell them or to make money out of them, but I have.
How long does it take you? How long does it take you to make one?
Well, like I say, there's a range. The very first one was 275 hours, and the second one was around 320 hours to make. Yeah, and that's not including the preliminary design work. That's just the assembling of the mosaic work. Typically, it begins with either, this one was a model photo shoot. So after taking an image of a model, I then simplify it with the idea of glass in mind, because it's not as fluid as paint, and so I've got to simplify the shades, the tonal values, and the planes, and things like that. Yeah.
How long did it take you to learn how to do it? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to jump on this. I'm really interested. I love it. It's great. How long did it take to learn how to do it, to perfect it to this level? Because there's a great amount of detail. So I'm sure you know that as an artist, there's a certain standard you want to meet before you present it to anyone. So how long did it take you to get to that point where you said, I can do the perfect work?
Okay. Since you didn't put up your hand, I'm going to get to you later. Well, I would say before I was actually happy and satisfied with the outcome of my work, it took me about 3 years. I was able to start selling within the first year, but that inner voice and that style, personal style, took about 3 years before I was comfortable with it. And if you Google mosaic art, you'll see there's a variety of styles. And everyone has to develop their own style. And mine has taken me about 3 years.
I want to know if the glass, did you make it yourself, or did you buy, or do you stain it yourself?
A combination of three. I buy some of it, I make some, which is really like fusing. I don't actually stain it myself. I fuse it in a kiln if I want specific colors, and I get others to make specific colors as well.
Are you ever going to do a whole set so that you can do like an art gallery show in New York so that people can come and actually see the work firsthand without like finding out verbally like this?
Yes, like I said, my intention is to continue with the series of the portraits of African women. However, I do not think it's going to be as often and as quick in making this, only because I am going to become more involved in going back to Africa and working in Southern Africa for a certain amount of time during the year. I mean, it's going to that part will contribute obviously to the material, the people firsthand that I encounter, but it's going to lessen my creative time with this. So, in a nutshell, I will continue, and most likely it won't be a gallery showing of that nature where all the works are collected in one place, only because most likely and hopefully they're going to be purchased and will be scattered.
How do you come up and stick with the concept? Because I know it's really hard to make a concept and actually follow through on it. How do you do that?
Well, I'm not sure if I really understand your question, but this concept, for example, my mom, when she was younger and still living in South Africa, liked to wear this type of headgear. So I already had in mind the type of work that I wanted to do, or the type of image that I wanted. But it took me a long while to find a visually attractive image. As much as I think my mom was attractive, but you know, my recollection of her was when she was in her 60s, and so I wanted someone young and fresh. And a friend of mine in Cape Town, South Africa, hunted through the models and eventually found this image for me. And so I had this as a photograph.